Now, in the past few weeks, we've presented the evidence for these facts. And today we want to discuss how skeptics have responded to them. In brief, there have been 5 naturalistic theories proposed to account for the evidence concerning Jesus' resurrection. Dr. Gary Habermas, one of the leading historians in the world on the evidence for Jesus' resurrection, comments.
Historically, we probably have 5 major naturalistic theories. You have a couple kinds of fraud theory. The disciples did something with the body, stole it, whatever, and then lied about the appearances. Somebody else did something with the body. Third, maybe Jesus didn't die on the cross. Fourth, the disciples saw hallucinations, or some variety of legend which says these stories just came about as mythology does and nothing really happened in history regarding the resurrection.
Now, if you're not a Christian, have you ever appealed to one of these naturalistic theories to try and explain away the evidence for Jesus' resurrection? If so, I'd like you to listen to why scholars have been forced by the evidence to refuse these alternate theories and conclude that Jesus must have risen from the dead. First, let's examine the theory that claims the disciples stole the body and then lied about Jesus appearing to them.
The first form of fraud theory is that the disciples stole the body and that they later lied or misrepresented the data about the appearances. This actually has not been held by a reputable scholar for probably more than 200 years. It was very popular back then, and of course you find it right in the New Testament. Now, the reason I think critics have mostly given up on it is for several reasons right up front, but it's the disciples who believed they saw appearances of the risen Jesus. How do you steal a body, lie about the appearances, and think you really saw him? So that crashes on this big rock because everybody believes the disciples thought they saw Jesus. Secondly, you got the transformations. They were transformed to the point of willing to die. How do you explain that? By a lie or some big fraud. 2 major refutations also are the appearance to James, the appearance to Paul. How do you get James and Paul on board to some kind of contrivance, to some kind of fraud? And we could give other reasons, but by this point, the critic, I think, is saying something like, I don't take that. Nobody takes that view anyway. But that is one of the historical theories.
Next, the second naturalistic theory that is proposed by non-Christians to account for Jesus' resurrection is this. If it wasn't the disciples who stole the body, it must have been someone else. It could have been the gardener or even an unknown person who removed the body. Now, what do scholars say about this theory?
The next attempt, let's say fraud by other than the disciples. The butler did it. It can be anybody. It can be the gardener, as you see in the Gospel of John. It can be, let's make it tough, let's say some unknown person moved the body. It's really irrelevant. The major problem with the second variety of fraud that removes it from the disciples is you don't address the disciples' experiences. No theory that inadequately addresses the disciples' experiences can get out on the table because, again, the disciples believed they saw appearances of the risen Jesus. How do you get that from somebody else taking the body? In fact, let's say it this way. With fraud 2, so to speak, somebody else other than the disciples removed the body, all you've got is an empty tomb explanation. It says nothing about the experiences, nothing about the transformations, nothing about James, nothing about Paul. And by this time, the critic again is going, I didn't say that anyway. And you're down the stream and you've given up on both the fraud theories.